Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Evelyn of Pink Sheep Design, aka the Pink Sheep or the Bulky Yarn Queen, and I am here with a crochet along style tutorial. And although it is the heat of summer and it's really hot here in Georgia, I decided it was time for me to start thinking about my fall designs for this year and start creating some great video tutorials for you guys to use alongside my patterns so that it makes it a little easier, especially for my beginners who want to make some fun, chunky winter and fall designs. So today's tutorial is for I used to call this my signature cowl. If you don't know, I used to go to craft shows, 10 to 12 craft shows a year between October and Christmas. And this was one of my best sellers because it's so chunky and squishy and warm and wonderful. It's just one of, like I said, it was a fan favorite. I made them every single year, and we're gonna do a tutorial for it today. So what you're gonna need is about 4 skeins of Wool Ease Thick and Quick. See if I can hold that up for you guys. So this is Wool Ease Thick and Quick by Lion Brand Yarn. You're going to need about 4 skeins of this. This one is 106 yards. I believe if you purchase their wool that has like stripes and variegated colors, you get a little less yardage. But I'm pretty sure that 4 will do it either way. And you can choose your color, but you need 4 because you're going to hold 2 strands of yarn together to create this. So that's the yarn that you need. It is a size 6 super bulky yarn. So if you can't find Lion Brand Thick and Quick, you can totally use something else. I actually have a blog post. I will put it in the description box of some great substitutions that are super bulky size 6 yarn that I use for my patterns. The other thing that you're going to need is a 25mm crochet hook. See if I can get it to focus on the hook for you there. This is one of our 3D printed crochet hooks. We 3D print these to make them lighter and just easier to work with because it can be pretty difficult working with a hook this size, especially if it's heavy. It's going to cause you some wrist and shoulder pain and all that fun stuff. So these make it a little easier. If you love working with chunky yarn, you can check them out. I'll put a link in the description as well. But that's really all you need. So grab yourselves 4 skeins of yarn and a 25mm hook. And I'm going to flip this camera around and we're going to get started and have a little fun. All right, so we've got our 25mm hook and our size 6 super bulky yarn. I've actually got this wonderful little basket over here on the ground that I'm going to toss my yarn in to act as a ginormous yarn bowl. I'm going to slip this off of here, find the end to my yarn, and then I have another ball of yarn. I'm actually using an old project, so I'm taking that project apart as I create this new one. So that's my first strand of working yarn. Got my second strand from this one. I'm going to drop that in the bucket. Go ahead and pull myself some yarn to start. And we are going to get started on this super jumbo cowl. Hope you guys are actually making this when it's a little bit cooler outside, unlike me. It's probably 90 degrees and humid here, but that's okay. We have to plan ahead, right? All right, so we are going to start with a slip knot. If you do not know how to make a slip knot, or you're unsure how to create a chain or do some of these basic stitches, please be sure to check out my Learn to Crochet playlist here on my YouTube channel, and that will show you how to create all of these stitches and get you on your way to being able to follow some of the more complicated patterns. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is chain 26. All right, once I have chained 26 stitches, I'm actually going to lay my chain out and make sure that it is straight because you don't want to twist your chain. You're going to be working in the round to create this, and if you twist your chain to start out, you're going to end up with a twisted scarf. So Make sure that you lay your chain out. It's nice and straight. This is what it would look like if it was twisted. You actually will see a twist, right? So I'm going to take that twist out of there. I'm going to lay it nice and straight. And you are actually going to be joining into the first chain stitch, right? So right over here, you're going to be joining into this stitch. So what I usually try to do is I fold my chain over, trying to make sure again that I don't have a twist. And once I fold that over, I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that first stitch here. I'm going to yarn over the hook, and I'm going to pull my yarn through both loops on the hook. That is my slip stitch. So now I'm left with one single loop on my hook. There we go. And my chain is now attached. So I'm ready to start working in the round. Now that we are joined, we're going to go ahead and start on our rows. So this does not count as row 1. The chain does not count as row 1. I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to half double crochet into every single stitch around, right? So this includes this very first stitch that you see right here. That's the one that we're going to be working into, and you are going to be working beneath 2 strands of yarn. So anytime you insert your hook, it should be underneath 2 strands of yarn. So to half double crochet, you're going to do yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch space, that first chain space, yarn over again, pull up a 3rd loop. In this case, you've technically got 6 loops because you have 2 strands of yarn, but this would count as 3 loops, all right, since you're holding that yarn together. I'm going to yarn over again, and I'm going to pull through all 3 loops on my hook, all right, and I'm going to do that all the way around. So yarn over. I'm going to find my next chain space. Again, I'm only working into underneath technically 1 strand of yarn, even though that's 2 strands, but we're holding them together. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up my 3rd loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on my hook. We are going to be working 1 half double crochet into every stitch around from our original chain, which means at the end of this row we should have 26 half double crochet stitches before we join. Okay. We are at the end of that first row. Give myself a little more yarn. So you guys can see that we have this nice row now of super chunky half double crochet stitches all the way around. And then you can also see this is that first stitch here, and we would be joining into this first stitch. All right, you're not going to join into like the chain space over here. You want to make sure that you're actually working into the loops from that first chain right here. All right. So before I join, I always do my stitch count before I join because it's a lot easier to to count the stitches that way. So I'm going to count the V's up top. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. Actually, I only have 25. So I need to make one more stitch, right? And I do have this one more space right here. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that final space, pull up that 3rd loop, yarn over again, pull through all 3. Now I have 26 stitches around and I'm ready to join. So I'm going to join into the V of this first stitch. And actually, let's make sure, because that should be a total of 4 strands of yarn that I join into. All right, so you can see here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's those 2 V strands over the top. I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch. So that means I'm going to take this yarn and I'm going to pull it not only through that stitch, but through that first loop on my hook. Okay, so I'm left with 1 loop, and we now have a joined row. All right. So from here, I'm going to chain 1, and we're going to move on to round 2, which is actually going to be the same as round 1. Right? We're going to work half double crochet stitches all the way around, no increases yet, just plain half double crochets, 26 around that round. Oh, and we're working in the back loop only. Almost forgot to say that. So if you guys are looking at this work, let's go over that really quick. All right. So if you guys are looking, you can see the stitches on the front. Okay. If I turn the work up, you can see this nice V, these V's that run along the top. But if you turn it one more time, see, yep, there is a loop back here. So we're going to be working into that back loop only on these stitches. All right, so again, if I turn the work forward, you can see our nice stitches across the front. If I turn it up, you see a V. And then if I turn just past the V, there's a loop back here. And those are the loops that we're going to be working our half double crochet stitches into. All right. So I chained 1. I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm actually going to take this yarn and I'm going to hold it back with my finger so that I can look for that back stitch. So this is that back loop. I've got this nice V right here, these 2, but then there's this loop back here behind it, and that's what I'm going to be working into. So I'm going to insert my hook in there, find my working yarn again, yarn over my hook, pull up my 3rd loop, it's got 3, yarn over again, and pull through all 3 loops on my hook. All right, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to yarn over. I may grab that piece of yarn with this finger to pull it aside to look for that back loop. So again, I've got these 2, this one, this one. I'm going to turn it further and find this back loop, and I'm going to insert my hook without losing my yarn over. Got 3, yarn over again, pull through all 3 loops on my hook. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Yarn over, find that back loop, pull up my 3rd loop, and pull all the way through. So what should be happening as you do this is you will see that you are now leaving a V on the front of your work. All right, and that's the really cool pattern that this is going to create, where the V's are going to go around and be very pronounced on the front side of your work. All right, so I'm going to do that all the way around. All right, I'm at the end of my 2nd row, so I'm going to do a quick stitch count. I should have 26 stitches. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 3, 2, 4, 5, 26. Perfect. So I'm good to go ahead and join this row. All right. Now, when you join the row, you know, we have been working in the back loop, which is back here. I'm going to join into the front 2 loops. All right. So when you look at that first set of V's, so you've got your stitches here, so you can see the post of the stitch here, and then you turn this work up and you've got that first set of V's. those are the V's I'm going to work into for my slip stitch to join my row. So I'm going to work underneath these two, but that's going to leave that back loop for me to work my first stitch of each row into. All right, so I've got my V's, these two, technically 4 strands of yarn that I'm going to work my slip stitch into, and that leaves this back loop of 2 strands of yarn that I'm going to work my first half double crochet into that back loop only for that row, for the next row. All right, so for my slip stitch, I'm going to go underneath those first 2 loops of the half double crochet stitch from the beginning of this row. I'm going to slip stitch all the way through, chain 1, and then find that back loop, yarn over, find that back loop, get underneath there, pull up my 3rd loop, wrap that yarn around, and pull all the way through. And that is going to start my 3rd row. All right, so the 3rd row, same thing, except at the very end, we're going to add an increase. Okay, we have reached the end of row 3. You can see now that we have 3 sections of these nice V's across the front of our work. All right, so at the end of row 3, you're going to add an increase, which means that you're just going to place a second half double crochet into that last stitch. All right, so you already did 1. I've got this 1 half double crochet right here. I'm going to add another half double crochet into that same exact spot. All right, so I make sure I'm going into that underneath that same loop, that back loop only, and pulling through, and there is my increase. All right, so I'm going to count around because now I should have 27 since I added the increase. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Perfect. All right, so now I'm going to join. And again, I'm going to join underneath this first V, both of those loops. Join with a slip stitch. So I'm going to slip all the way through. And I'm going to chain 1 to start my 4th row, which is going to be just like the rows before it. We're going to work 27 now, half double crochets all the way around with no increase. All right, we are at the end of row 4. I'm going to join with a slip stitch into that first stitch, that first half double crochet stitch. All right, I'm going to chain 1. Then I'm going to work row 5, which is going to be a repeat of row 4. We're not doing any increases in row 5. Same thing, half double crochets into the back loop only. All right, we have reached the end of row 5. I'm going to join again with a slip stitch, chain 1, and for row 6 we are going to add an increase at the end of the row, right? So you're going to work your half double crochet stitches in the back loop only all the way around, and then on the final stitch of that row you're going to put 2 half double crochets into the same stitch in the back loop only. Okay, we have one more stitch right here left in the 6th row, and we are going to place 2 half double crochet stitches into the back loop only of that same stitch. There's 1, same stitch, there's 2. All right, so that is our half double crochet increase for row 6. We're going to join with a slip stitch again into these first 2 V stitches to finish up row 6. We're going to chain 1, and then we move on to row 7. So rows 7 and 8, we're going to work half double crochets all the way around, no increases. Working into, again, the back loop only, all the way around. Right, that is the end of row 8. You can see our nice lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. I'm going to do a quick count. I started with 26. I have done 2 increase rows, so I should have 28 on this row. So I'm going to do a quick check-in. 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, 28. Perfect. All right, got 28 stitches. Moving on to row 9. And if you haven't already noticed, there is a repeating pattern for our increases. We go rows 1 and 2, increasing on row 3, row 4 and 5, increasing on row 6, row 7 and 8, increasing on row 9. And we're going to continue that until the end of the pattern. All right, so working slip stitch to finish out row 8, chaining 1 to start row 9, And for row 9, we will be working half double crochets all the way around until we get to the final stitch in the row, where we're going to place an increase of 2 half double crochet stitches into that final stitch space. Right, we are at the last row, the last stitch in row 9. You can see it right here. Okay, so I'm going to place 2 half double crochets into this final stitch, into the back loop only. There's 1. A little more yarn. And here's 2. Also into the back loop only, underneath the same loop. So we've got a nice increase here. You can see that 1 and 2. And then we're going to join with a slip stitch into that first stitch of the row, closing out row 9. So the beautiful thing about this pattern is that you can make it as long or as short as you'd like. All right. If you want to stop here and have a short cowl, you know, that might be nice if you have craft shows and you want things that work up really, really fast, and you want to save some yarn. But you can also extend this as long as you want to make it a super, super chunky cowl that has some layering to it, because since it has this nice grade out towards the bottom, it lays very nicely around the neck. So as you continue to add your length, all right, here starting at row 9, you would add 10 and 11, rows 10 and 11 with no increases, and then you would add row 12 with 2 half double crochets in the final stitch for that next increase. And then you could follow up row 12 with a row 13 and 14 with no increases, followed by a row 15 with an increase, right? So that's the pattern as you continue to make it longer. I'm going to work this out a couple more rows. I will probably go to row 15. I like to make my cowls nice and long, and then I'll meet you at the end, and we will talk about how to weave in your ends and finish up this cowl. So I completed up to row 15, right? And that was working increase rows on row 3, 6, 9, 12, and then on the final 15th row. So I have a double increase, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch right here before I joined with my slip stitch to finish off row 15. Right, so you can see that it's a slight grade, but the cowl does increase in size from the start where you had 26 rows around to the bottom. And this allows the bottom of the cowl to sit really nicely around the neck. This side, this wider side, would go over the head first, then your head would come out on the top here. All right, and I'm going to show that on once we get finished weaving in our ends. So the beautiful thing about working with 2 strands of yarn held together is that it's actually really, really easy to weave in your ends. Okay, so let me tighten this last piece up. We're going to cut ourselves a fairly long strand. Okay, put that away. And then taking that little tail that we created, I'm going to actually pull that through that final loop on the hook and pull it tight. All right. From here, I'm going to flip the cowl inside out. And what's cool about this design too is that you actually have a whole nother design when you reverse it. So if you prefer this look, you can actually have it this way. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of reversible. So to weave in your ends, this is the tail from the top where we started. All right, I just pulled it tight. And since you have 2 strands of yarn here, I'm going to take my tapestry needle. There we go. I'm going to fold the yarn over the tapestry needle end and squeeze that nice and tight, pull the needle out, and then thread that yarn through the tapestry needle. That's really kind of my trick for that. This needle is a little bit smaller. It took a little bit of work, but there we go. So I now have both strands of yarn through my tapestry needle. Okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to go underneath a couple of strands of yarn. I can get that one through there. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of weave it down into the scarf. Okay, let's find one more. Let's go under these two. Really just trying to move the yarn away from the edge of the scarf. Okay, so now I'm going to remove one strand of yarn from my tapestry needle. So I'm going to hold on to one strand. I'm going to pull the other strand out. And then I'm going to take this strand and find another 2 loops to go underneath. So I'm going to loop under these and pull that through. Remove my tapestry needle, and then I'm going to tie a knot. Right? So usually when I tie knots, I do a double knot. So I'm going to wrap once, wrap twice, then pull. Not too tight because that's going to end up cinching this. So for the first one, you want it to be a snug knot, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wrap once, I'm going to wrap twice, and then I'm going to pull this one more snug. Right? So nice and tight, and then I'm going to snip the ends, leaving just a little bit of a tail. Right? And these blend in really nicely because of how chunky this scarf is. It's very, very rare that the people who purchased from me could even find these knots. I knew where they were because I put them there. But it's so easy to hide them because of the chunky nature of this scarf. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to make sure that that's pulled tight. This kind of got a little wonky here. I don't know why these stand out as much, but I can actually kind of fix that when I weave my ends in. Right? So I'm going to thread my tapestry needle with both strands of yarn. Okay, and I'm actually going to go underneath, so you can see this side. I'm going to go into that final stitch to just kind of pull that through to this side. Okay, and then I'm actually going to scoop up those stitches that look a little wonky. I'm going to take those with me to kind of make them lay down a little more flat. Right, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to find a couple of double loops that I can pull this through just to move it away from the edge of the scarf and towards the center. So just kind of weaving that through. Right, so I'm at least like an inch away from the top of the scarf now. Right, so I'm going to again only remove one of the strands of yarn from my tapestry needle, so I've still got one strand on the hook, and I'm going to go under another maybe 2 strands of yarn. Okay, remove my tapestry needle, and now I'm going to do another double knot. So I'm going to wrap once, wrap twice, pull snug but not too tight because I don't want it to cinch this space, and then wrap once, wrap twice. This one I can pull tight, and take my needles and snip. Okay, so now I am ready to flip it back right side out, and my cowl is complete. Okay, so this is the side that does not have, oh, and I had to join a second ball of yarn, so I do have some ends here from the join, so I can snip those as well. Okay, but this is the side without the seam. Here's the side with the seam. Okay, and you are finished with your cowl. So I'm going to try this on just so you guys can see what it looks like. All right, guys, we finished this super chunky crochet cowl, what I used to call my signature cowl when I was selling at craft shows. As I said before, your top portion, this is actually the chain side, so where I started, is going to be smaller than the end side, okay, because we had some increases. So this side is the larger side. You can see when you hold it up that this side is a little longer. This is the side that you're going to want to put over your head first. Okay, and then you can really work that cowl around and really shape that super nice. Right? You can pull it a little away from the neck if you want it away from the neck, or it's really cold, you can cover your face like this, put on a jacket here, and no more wind chill in your face. So I hope you guys enjoyed this project. It's one of my favorite cowls that I've ever made. Super excited to finally have this video ready for you to follow. Let me know in the comments what you think. I also sell this I sell this pattern as a PDF in my Etsy shop. So especially if you're learning how to read crochet patterns still, you can purchase the PDF pattern. I will put the link to the PDF in the description of this video. But you can purchase the pattern and then follow along. And that can really help you start deciphering patterns and get you on the road to following even more complex crochet patterns. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel so you never miss a video. And until next time, happy hooking!